cybersecurity protocols and other emerging concerns for DBEs on government contracts. And so we understand that with the new administration, there's been a lot of talk about different executive orders and assaults on DEI, etc. Coupled with that, there are other things with the cybersecurity piece that many folks have kind of not necessarily paid that much attention to. So we want to raise awareness with you about that with our experts here today, as well as allow you all an opportunity to have some questions at the end for our distinguished experts. So what I will do is allow each of them to share with you a little bit about who they are, their background, and what we hope to accomplish today. Starting with ladies first, we'll go to my far right and move to my left. Please share with the crowd who you are, your company, your role, and what we can expect today from the panel.
All right. I'll even stand up a little bit. Am I okay standing up, or did I mess you up? Okay. I'm Adonica Randall. I'm the president of Abaxent LLC. We're a 23-year-old technology broker company. We've been through a lot of ups and downs as things who have come out with like what we're talking about with CMMC, a lot of government regulations, those types of things, and we've been in technology. Our claim to fame is really the technology that's in the Fiserv Forum where the bucks play. So that gives you a little bit, it's easier to say that than to tell you what we actually do. You can go see it.
Thank you, Adonica. Next up, ma'am, can you share a little bit about who you are and how you rock and roll?
Well, because she stood up, I feel like I should stand up as well. I'm Dr. Sabrina Robins, and I am a workforce solutions and innovation expert, but I deliver a lot of training to entrepreneurs. So I typically train in soft skills and sales, and today I will talk about the importance of being cyber aware and having a security mindset, and that's the type of training that I provide. And I'll focus on awareness and security mindset training today.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Robins. And you, sir?
Yes, good morning. I'm Todd Heinz, and basically I run our cybersecurity practice with an organization called Heartland Business Systems. And what our team does is anything from respond to organizations that get hit with ransomware or other cybersecurity problems, and we help organizations build programs, first of all, to stay safe from those kinds of attacks, but then also to show compliance to your partners and vendors and other groups that you want to work with. So my team, for example, works as what we call a virtual security officer for organizations and help them build up that awareness, that understanding, and the technical things that go with compliance, documentation, etc. So,
as we talked about a little bit earlier, the Trump administration has been moving swiftly since the inauguration on executive orders against diversity-focused programming and funding, and that definitely is a concern. The cybersecurity piece is seemingly a recently emerging type of concern. And just for the edification of those of us in the room, what would you say or describe cybersecurity as above and beyond someone just having some, antivirus stuff on their laptop or their desktop computer?
here's what's important. We aren't here to talk about the bits and bytes of a computer. That's really not as important as the other aspect.
Right.
Every organization has intellectual property. They have personal information about their employees, their customers, and so the data is really what's king, and it's protecting the data. The reason why we get involved with it, with technical kinds of things, is because that data sits in networks and on computers. But the real value, the crown jewel, is protecting that data. You don't want to have a customer and have information about them and lose that data. Or through that technology, perhaps have some kind of an attacker that's gotten into your technology and you pass that on to other folks in what we call a supply chain problem. That's really where a lot of groups are the most concerned, is making sure they don't get attacked from small businesses because they're not fully up to date on the technology of their networks, or that they lose their data. That causes reputational harm and all sorts of big things. That's really what cybersecurity is about. It's protecting the crown jewels.
Right, I'm going to follow Todd up with that. Like I said, he does a great job of making that understandable. The real answer is, you're the weakest link. Let me just net it out. You're the weakest link in the chain. If I'm a hacker, I'm coming after you because of who you're connected to, your larger customers, your network. It's very easy because the statistics show that in basically 90+% of SMB, small businesses, diverse businesses, women-owned businesses are non-compliant. You are the easiest portal in, all right? This, the stuff we're talking about with cyber is not new. I mean, you know, there's been ISO things for those of you who have ever been in the manufacturing world. There's always some type of government regulation, but the news in the newspaper every day is about someone getting hacked, some system going down, and the millions of dollars that it costs to try to recover from that. So that really, as Todd is saying, it's the data that we're trying to protect. Most companies are not paying as close attention to their data, and I'm going to add the other piece in there, which is process. You're not paying attention to your processes inside of your business that make it easy for somebody to manually walk in and take pictures of something or take information that's on somebody's desk out. You figure that because you're small, you're not the target. Because you're small, you are the target.
I also just would like to jump in and say that it's everyone's responsibility in terms of protecting data. And it comes down to quotes and purchase orders, things that you may just have laying on your desk. That's part of it. There's been times where I've gone to a facility and was just able to get in through the back door. I didn't have to go through the front door. I didn't have to give my ID. I just went around to the side and I was like, hey, can you tell me where such and such is? And they walked me to it. So I don't want us thinking, security and cybersecurity is just about IT. It's about all of us and how we protect documents, how we are compliant with processes, and it also includes physical security and barriers as well.
So given both the IT and the physical items that we ought to be more mindful of, are there any, I'll say, quote unquote, most significant emerging cybersecurity threats that organizations and construction-oriented firms should really be paying attention to or are particularly facing today that are particular to them and not other industries?
Yeah, and I'll start off by obviously phishing. And if you don't know exactly how it's spelled, the PHI rather than FISH, you're not going fishing for fish. People are going fishing for you. And what phishing is, if you aren't completely aware of that, is when somebody sends you an email that is disguised to deceive you in some way, either to get you to click on a link or download something or show up at another website to do something that would compromise the security or the integrity of your network or information. Here's why that is so important, and I know Dr. Robins will probably speak about some of the training efforts that go on. You could have the world's best infrastructure. Your IT folks have used the best devices, they configured them perfectly, and everything is rock solid. All you need is some emails to come through, and the receptionist or the CEO or anybody in between clicks on it, and you essentially bypass that technology. And so one of the biggest threats is, and I think Dr. Robins already mentioned it, it's not just the IT people who have to be smart on securing stuff. Everybody in the organization has to be, because if you click on something in a phishing attack, basically reading email and doing something, that's one of the biggest problems that we have now. The other thing that I'll just mention as a statistic, you've heard of maybe ransomware. It's that bad stuff that when it gets in, it shuts the whole network down. 83% of all ransomware gets in, not because of the IT equipment. So again, when we talk about cybersecurity, a lot of people want to frame it as an IT issue. 83% get in because of what we call operational failures. Somebody didn't do something they were supposed to. They didn't lock the back door. They didn't, secure confidential information on their desk before they left, etc. There's tons of things that cause what we call operational failures, and the vast majority of concern is for users that don't have a process either taught to them or they don't follow them.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And he talked about phishing, but many of us have passwords that are really easy to discern. I've been in facilities where I walk and the passwords are a sticky note right
They're all
there
taped right
on
there.
the computer.
I can tell by your faces, some of you are doing that.
Yep.
Don't do that.
Yeah. The other thing is posting on social media. And you may be really glad that you secured a contract or you met with someone. All that takes is very little research to see what have you posted online. Oh, what are the names of your kids? What are you doing? And so we're providing bits and pieces where it's really easy to get at what your passwords are. And when you get and then it's about being proactive. Maybe not wait until the 90 days or 60 days to change your password. And if your password is Susie Q 123, don't change it to Susie Q 1234. So we want to have symbols. We want to have all these things that makes it difficult because you have a lot of information that people are interested in. You have prices. You have customer emails. You have customer phone numbers and names. You have product SKUs. You have a lot of information that others would be interested in.
And I'll just add one thing on the password thing I think is very important. If you were to count how many characters your passwords are, if it's 8 or less, I can take your password and I can hack it. Any hacker can do it, but our team can hack it within 5 minutes.
Yeah,
An 8-character password is very hackable.
Right.
Sometimes it may take up to 24 hours under certain circumstances. The bottom line is when you talk about passwords, no matter how complex they are, you want to start having it to be 12 characters because it would take almost 1 million years to hack that under the same conditions. So the length of your password is one of the most important things in today's world. If you're 8 or less, you automatically got problems.
So as a follow-up question to that, the password piece, it has to be at least, let's say, 8 characters. And you say, well, hey, I heard about that cybersecurity panel. I'm going to make mine, 13 characters. Now, if you come into a situation where you've done that and, you have a phishing situation where it looked like it came from Microsoft 365 or Apple or what have you, or you were looking at a site and you inadvertently clicked on an advertisement to get more information, and then you get this scary signal. You have now entered into the deep dark tunnel of death. Are you cooked, or can you still salvage something by just closing all of your open URLs and turn the computer off and rebooting it? What do you do in that situation?
So those attackers have a lot of things in common with us. I like to do things the easiest way. And so it's a lot harder, even though it takes a relatively short amount of time to actually break a password. But if you give it to me, as Tim was saying, because you enter it in a phishing website that isn't real, and you give it to me, I got it. And I'm sorry, there's not a whole, it doesn't matter if it's 8 characters or 1,000 characters. If you give me your credentials, I can do a lot with that. Now, you could be very fast to turn off things. Just imagine your personal bank account and other accounts. If somebody got into it and you said, I just gave away something, and then you go and turn off your access or other things, you can prevent it, but odds are they're going to beat you to it in most cases because you're not really aware you did it.
And he's really talking about turning off access to like the bank account, not like pulling the plug on the computer. The computer's faster than your reactions. to what you're going to do. You know, you're talking about nanoseconds as opposed to the time it takes you to do something. It's just, and now with cell phones, which are now part of your technology landscape, you have to watch your texts that are coming in, fraudulent things like a lot of if you put a credit card in some of the parking meter things, it does some weird things sometimes. You have to watch that at a gas station because they have things called skimmers and you're not paying attention to them and you put a credit card in them. You know, I mean, this is beyond the cyber stuff. This is the IT technical side. You know, the security that you're talking about to secure your business is you're trying to make it so no one can take you out of business. You know, and so that's all the pieces that go to that, which, you know, I'll echo what Todd says. It's not just about the tech. It's also about your common sense movement, your emotions, who you talk to, how you're flowing information, whether it's paper-based, phone-based, technology-based, it doesn't matter. Okay, you now have to pay attention to all of those things.
And one of the things I would say is add to your common sense toolkit. If any of you are nosy like I am, I'm just going to say when it comes to security and having a security mindset and instilling a security culture is don't be curious. Don't click on things that really is not pertinent. If something is strange looking or you're receiving something, pick up the phone. Did you send me this?
Right.
Was it your intent? Don't click on it like, oh, I wonder what it is. Fight your nosiness and then stay away. That's what I do. I'm not an IT professional. When I get weird things, I make calls. Am I supposed to? If I'm not responsible for paying the Microsoft Office bill and I get one, hey, why did I get this? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? 100% of the time, the IT staff told me, no, just delete it. I don't open it to make sure. Just delete it. Don't, in this case, don't be curious.
Wow. So we are tightening up our anti-nosiness. With the free flow of information and technological advancements, how is the rise of AI impacting cybersecurity as we're kind of pushed to embrace AI to be more efficient, etc.? How does that blend in or bleed into the whole cyber space on the security side?
So let me just answer it the way I would when I act as a Chief Information Security Officer for organizations. I want you to embrace it, or at least look at the opportunities in which it can be embraced. Because one of the things about security is if you view security as, no, we're the no department. The answer is no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. That doesn't enable business. Security, just like finance and budgets, they're meant to support and enable business. So without a doubt, AI is offering different industries and different companies opportunities to augment their processes and build. But there is a downside. So for example, if you allow your employees to use ChatGPT or Copilot or something like that, the information you type in is publicly available. So if you were to just simply say, you know, how big is an elephant? There's no harm in that question. But if you were to say, I've got, you know, a customer whose name is fill in the blank, and I want to know how to do this or blah, 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 all of that information is, when you enter it in as, you know, your chat, feeds the other models which are publicly available. So one of the big things is you have to be aware, and your employees have to be aware, that it's a privacy issue, number one. Number two is when people get things back, they take it as golden. You always have to be a little, I don't want to say skeptical, but you always have to verify that what you got back is indeed true. Sometimes, for example, software developers, they can write stuff really fast. It will actually give them the code to build something. I'm going to build this in this language. and it's good. The problem is, if you don't check it with an expert eye, you could be inserting vulnerabilities that you weren't aware of. So between the verify, the privacy issues, and transparency. For example, when we write AI policies, we make sure that all employees are aware that they can't just do it. All AI tools or chatting has to be approved in order to use it. Because a lot of times you have to pass that transparency in use of AI to your vendors or to your customers if they ask for it. So I would say AI is a double-edged sword. It definitely offers opportunity, so don't be completely scared away by it, but at the same time understand where it can get you in areas of problems with privacy, wrong or misinformation, as well as transparency issues.
What I'm going to say is, let me, as you hear these things we're talking about, a lot of this you already know. You may not know the depth of it or how to avoid it. The question becomes, why do you care? Right? Why you care? And you care because your customer that you're trying to, your primes care. So let me drag it back to what we're doing here, which is your prime cares. Your prime is expecting you to have a certain amount of security. And we're not talking about IT security. We're talking about all the security. Sabrina talked about coming in the back door. Whenever I go and I'm talking to somebody about some base security things, I deliberately go in the back door. There's people smoking back there. And the door is propped open. And I look harmless. That's a mistake. All right? Because your primes are going to want to know, would you allow that to happen in your business? Because that disqualifies you from working with them. You know, the federal government, and we're here with construction, so a lot of you, who does work with the DOD, with the Department of Defense? Or your clients do business with the Department of Defense? Or the third choice is, you don't know. Okay? If you don't know, you need to go find out, because these things are now mandatory. They're not nice to haves anymore. You will lose business or not be considered for business because you are not cyber compliant. You are not compliant with simple things like papers in your office, technology flow, how things are happen, how you let people in and out of your business and your buildings. Okay? You now are responsible for knowing where you are on that curve of being compliant. You know, we have, you would be surprised, this is coming out of the Department of Defense. However, who the hell doesn't do business with the Department of Defense? Everybody thinks my client doesn't do that. Yeah, they do. You need to know with your clients up here who is doing business with them, because that mandate is being pushed down to all of us. We don't have options anymore. So if you are not, I'm scrambling to work with smaller companies because they're being surprised. Oh, do you have this certification? Are you going down this cyber path? Are you engaging people like Todd and the folks who do this kind of work to help you get to where you need to be? Oh, you're not doing that? Okay, that's nice. You let us know when you're doing it and then come back. So the first thing I would say with this cyber stuff is you need to know how high that flow goes that you're working in, period. You got to know who those clients are. And like I said, the Department of Defense may have put it out there, but everybody from retail clients, Target, Kohl's, those guys, obviously everybody else in the federal government is connected to these things, and we touch a lot of government money flowing down with the companies that we're talking about here. You know, you need to know the ultimate person that's sitting up here, because they are driving how cyber secure are you. Because we are, in case you didn't know, we're at war. And I'm not talking about the Gaza Strip and all that stuff. We've been at cyber war for quite a while now, okay? And everybody kind of knows that. You kind of know that back here, but you dismiss it because they haven't hit you. Guess what? No, the government is saying, that's fine. I'm not going to be part of that chain that hits you that comes all the way back up to us. So the reason that we're talking about this, the reason you care, is it's going to affect your business.
On that business tip, a follow-up to that, given the cyber wars that we're in right now and these different little cracks and crevices that folks are.
I like the dance that goes with
Yeah,
that. Keep
yeah,
going.
cracks and crevices.
I was like, is he
that
about to
folks
do
are,
it?
are slithering into, and coupled with the fact that, typically in business there's no free lunch. What are the costs associated with battening down the cybersecurity hatches of businesses, particularly if there is an incident that happens or some of the preventative maintenance types of things? Is it based on size of business, severity of incident, different tiers? How does that price point come? Because as folks are sharpening up their pencils, beginning of the year, looking at forecast budgets and all that kind of stuff, how much money needs to be devoted to this cybersecurity piece?
I'm going to say the answer is yes to all those things you said. You're going to have to consider that. I mean, obviously, price is going to be based on where you are in the process and the size of your business, and what you're trying to target. First of all, and I'm going to let Todd jump in here after this. This is not something that you're going to resolve by next weekend. No, this is a journey. I mean, depending on the size of your business, you're talking about this taking you, months to a year. I mean, this is not, you're not going to turn this leaf over and fix all this stuff overnight. And there is no technological way to get out of this by itself. So I would say, Todd, you want to?
Yeah, and I'll add on to what Adonica said. There is a cost to bring yourself up to a certain level of security. But it doesn't stop there. It is a lifelong journey. Security is not and should not be thought of as a project. You may end up doing little projects to get there, but security is operational. In the same way that you see accounting and whatever else practice you have as an ongoing year after year thing, cybersecurity should be. And when you talk about cost, it's actually a control or a best practice in a lot of different areas where you have to have a separate budget for cybersecurity. Because if the IT department is responsible for it, here's what typically happens. They either have a choice of doing some awareness training for their users or buying a new server that's falling apart. Which one do you think is going to win in most cases? And so you don't want that cybersecurity budget to be competing with stuff. So for example, to have at least some money set aside for awareness and training so that everybody is aware of the things. Maybe a little set aside to make sure you have an incident response plan. Because the truth is, it is absolutely no longer if it will happen. It is considered across the board by every security professional in the world when it happens. So when you do get attacked, whether it's a small thing or a big thing, you have a process, a capability to handle it. So there are some things that are top tier of what to put in place, and it requires a budget. As far as how much, I tell you what, it really depends. For example, it would be perfectly fine to go on the internet, do a Google search for incident response plan. Find something that looks something that you might adopt, customize it to yourself, and it's relatively free except for your cost for later. Obviously, you could hire an expert to come in and help you with it. So there are lots of ways to kind of get there. And if you were sharp and looked far enough, you can find a fairly good amount of low-cost things. But to get it done quickly so that you're not competing with your limited resources already, you're probably getting some help doing it, whether it's with a tool or a resource source, and that's going to cost money.
I'd like to specifically speak to solopreneurs and small businesses, because I'm pretty sure what these two just said is scary. and it is.
Help us out.
But what I found, and Todd did mention this, is the first step is to start with awareness training for everyone, so they know what their role is. And then once you have really honed in on a security culture and everybody knows their particular role, that is very cost effective. And then when it's time to go to the next level, then you know what that is. A lot of times, given the size of your companies and what you're doing, establishing the getting the cyber awareness and putting it in places to create the culture will help minimize what you need down the road. Why? Because you will have control over your documentation. You will understand what documentation is and how to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be written down. You can always refine later. And then that leaves more money for the technical things that you actually need. But I've seen too many times where people go off and do these big things, and it's still the little things that will keep you from getting to where you need to be. And then one more thing I wanted to say. I've been in a lot of conference rooms. How about you guys? And how many times have you seen where someone has not properly cleaned the whiteboard? And you can see their whole strategy and all of that, or they half did it. You know, it's those kinds of things. And you're always being evaluated. When I go in to visit and I'm looking for partners, I'm like, wow, they're not really safe. They're not really secure. I don't know if they could be a partner for me because we're partnering with a prime. And the prime needs to know that we have a security mindset. And they're talking to each other. I was like, do you know I went into such and such and the whole thing was just on the whiteboard. Or they sat me down in this room and with all this paper. I didn't have anything else to do. I told you I was nosy. So I just looked around. I was like, they had spreadsheets all over. It's those types of things that is really free to address with education. And I'm not saying you don't need the higher cybersecurity remediation actions. You do. But you want to start as low as possible and get a secure base and culture.
Sounds like it's not an either or, but a both and. I have a few more questions in our next or last 15 minutes or so, but I wanted to open it up to questions from the audience. Just for the record, to repeat those questions, what happens if you are buying a new building, you want to add some cameras? What are the best safety concerns to keep your information and data safe? And number two, if you're working with a government department such as WISDOT, if they get hacked and you have them as a trusted source, when those emails and communications from them come, how do you decipher between whether it's legit or if it's a deep fake email? That's it, panel.
Well, maybe I'll start with some of the camera things. You brought up some great concerns, but it even goes deeper. So, for example, when we set up cameras, we're looking to make sure a couple things are in place. What you brought up specifically with the data and how they handle it, they should offer some form of written attestment of what they do with your data, sort of like a privacy statement kind of thing. You should seek it. Because believe it or not, you're responsible for your data there. And so a lot of times what gets overlooked is cybersecurity is also handled when you talk about vendors through contracts. You make sure that they have SLAs, you make sure that they have protections, you ask them what they have, and if you feel it's important, put it into your agreement with them. But the other thing that we have to look for, not only on protecting the data that they might have, is attackers getting in. So one of the controls in a lot of environments is to make sure that that camera has some indication that it's on. Because if it's on the network and an attacker gets in and turns it on, like in the conference room or someplace, they're basically got an open mic to what is happening and seeing it. So you want to control what we call collaborative devices. And then the other thing is, if it's a surveillance type of camera, attackers are very, very good with digital evidence to include surveillance video that they'll go ahead and erase it. And so you say, hey, that's not a problem, officer. We've got everything right here. And you go to look at it, and it's not there. So you want to make sure it's protected from access and who can access it and that it's strong. Because if you lose that data or it's not used properly, you've got to be aware of it. And the last thing I'll say that's kind of a broad thing for all vendors, I mentioned that you're responsible for it. Imagine this, your primes, when they come to you, they are held responsible by the government for your actions. If you have people work under you as a subcontractor or as somebody that works on the side, you are responsible for everything that they do. If data is stolen, you can't say, well, that subcontractor did it. You will be held responsible. The company above you will be held responsible.
It's a flow down.
Legally, so you really have to have control over your vendors. And in this case, it would be the camera folks. How are they holding our data? So part of it's education, part of it's contractual, and some of it's technical.
And what about when you see the government stuff, looks like it's a regular, legitimate email or communication, but it's not?
That's where the training that Dr. Robins was talking about is, you look for things. You verify if you're unsure. You call them and say, this doesn't seem right, or whatnot. That's the whole purpose of an attacker, is they try to deceive you. And the closer they make it real, which they're getting very sophisticated at doing, the harder it is for you to tell. So it's just a continuous awareness in training that helps overcome that. There is technology to do, but it starts with user involvement.
Yeah, I would say that the key thing that I know we've put in our office is if you weren't expecting that, just stop a minute. We all get so many emails and we're moving at the speed of light and that kind of stuff. It's one of those things where if you were not expecting that, just stop and say, why am I getting this now? The DOT and all the other departments, they send out stuff with a cadence kind of frequency, right? We sort of know when those things are coming, and if you get something that's sort of out of place, it's like, wait a minute. Because to your point, they now look exact like the thing that's there. But if I wasn't expecting that, just send it to a trash file, a delete file, or send it to a hold folder. Because I've got a hold folder on my thing. It's just, I wasn't expecting that, so until I call somebody else at the office and say, were we expecting XYZ, whether it says something about money or whatever, because it's normally something that you would be anxious to open. That's your first clue. It's generally not something that's like, oh, I don't care about this. It's something generally that you're anxious to open. Oh, wait a minute. It might be a check. It might be this or some kind of information. If you weren't expecting it, just put it in a hold file until you can either, to Todd's point, make a phone call and ask somebody, did you send this? Were you intending to send this? It takes extra time. It's a hell of a lot cheaper and a hell of a lot faster than having your network go down and you're out and you're totally out of business because you can't operate. Because to Todd's point, they're getting better, they're getting slicker, the stuff is getting harder to track. But everybody in your office needs to know if they see something that they weren't expecting, just put it on hold. If you coming in and ask about it 15 minutes later, it's just in that folder, they can go get it, right? That's a simple way to just sort of, because even from the technology side, we can't block everything. We can't block everything. We'd like to, but we can't.
I wanted to get back to cameras and go on the other end and talk about monitors. Some of the things I've been able to do is go right around with the security desk and look at the monitors. And that's going to let me know where the cameras are placed, all of that. And so again, if you have a screen or something to blur it or make sure that the public does not have access to it. And I typically see this with smaller companies. It's at the front desk person and they'll say, oh, come around for a minute because I don't look threatening. Like, oh yeah, I'll come on around. And then I'm nosy, so I'm looking like, oh, they have cameras here and here and here. I wonder what kind of things. And I shouldn't be able to do that, right? So it's free to tell me, no, stay on the other side, or very minimal investment is to have the blur screens so that folks that are not supposed to see things don't have access to see where your cameras are placed.
For the record, making sure that all of the things that you have, all paperwork is secured. Don't be lackadaisical about leaving stuff out in the open. Try to secure all those things and always be on alert and be vigilant about making sure that proprietary information is in a safe place, not laying around, easily accessible from prying/nosy eyes. We have time for one or two more questions.
Yes, gentlemen.
Okay. Question was for the record about AI and quantum computing. Are we headed toward a place where, hey, things are even beyond being secure? It's just the wild, wild west of information.
Yes, and hopefully, though, our cybersecurity experts and tools can at least recognize and keep up with it. But there's no doubt that the tools out there, for example, quantum computing. I said that a password, if it was 12 characters, right now in our current technology, might take 100,000 or a million years to break. With quantum computing, it'll be seconds.
Right.
Right. It'll be something much less. So obviously, we don't have the capability to block that yet because we're not quite there. AI offers an incredible amount of the same kind of thing where we're going to see attacks that we've not seen before. For example, within seconds, an organization or an AI hacker can use AI to scan your website, anything that you've communicated outward that's publicly accessible, and build a profile as if you were their best buddy. And so instead of, maybe some of you remember, but back in the early days of phishing, we would get emails that said, I'm a Nigerian prince, and I've got $1 million I want to give you. Well, okay, today it seems kind of silly that it's out in the open. Much better. They're going to get to know you, your organization, who you communicate with, what you just communicated a few minutes ago, and they're going to design an attack that a response to that. And so that fast relationship is something that is going to take a lot of people off guard. It's not going to be obvious like it has been. So yes, without a doubt, AI is going to be a tool for attackers to do things that we're not prepared to handle. Hopefully we'll get our arms around it in some form.
Man, for the record, she said a mouthful. She talked about Wi-Fi. Anything Wi-Fi is hackable. She also talked about you should hardwire your cameras as opposed to putting them out in the Wi-Fi piece. She also talked about, well, the question was mentioned that devices that you have that you kind of commingle your personal and your business, you might want to segregate those a bit and have your exclusive business stuff be exclusively business to make it harder to get into and dip into that. She also mentioned that enemies can be folks that you know and not always the big bad wolf on the outside. So be mindful of haters in your life. They can turn into full-fledged enemies. And then the question had to do with 3 different ways of securing your information. Is it a cloud drive or your server? And what was the other one? Steady state?
Steady state, because I also learned that USBs, that you had anything like DVDs, they corrupt really easily, and it's also easy to run scripts that they can interject through an email that will destroy that drive. So steady state drives are the most secure. Over time they can be dropped, etc. And what protection recommendations you have for those devices as well.
Excellent. Steady state was the last one. I'll leave it to the panel.
I think that answer is going to take longer than a minute.
Great question. And I will say that all 3 of those kinds of things, and then there's others too you could add to it, they all have the potential to be extremely secure, and they all have the potential to be very insecure or vulnerable. It's not so much the inherent drive or cloud thing, it's how you protect it. There are tons of controls that go with it. It starts with least privilege, only allowing people to have access that need access to it, number one. What kinds of identity and authentication do you have to get into them? Like, for example, multi-factor authentication. Like when you go to your bank, they make you have something on your thing to sign into or get a number in your email. That's a form of protection. It's called layered security. There's really not one thing that'll make it totally secure. It's a ton of little things that when you add them all up makes it very hard to work with. For example, on any of those kinds of drives, you can what's called encrypt your data at rest, which means when it's sitting there, it's encrypted. And if it's encrypted to a certain standard, which most things do, but for example, if it's got privacy data or HIPAA data or other things that's important, if somebody stole it, it's not considered breached because it's impossible in most cases to break that encryption. There are certain things you have to do to make sure that's the case. But if you add that layer with a bunch of others, that's when you start to make any one of those secure and acceptably secure. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it really is about applying all sorts of layered security techniques on any one of those 3 to give it an acceptable security.
Yeah.
And if you don't do any of that, it's going to make it unsecured and vulnerable.